Beneath West Yorkshire's moors and historic mills lies a darker past. Join us as we explore 10 of the county's most haunted places where restless spirits and chilling legends still roam after dark. Shibden Hall, set among wooded slopes on the edge of Halifax, Shibden Hall appears at first like a tranquil 17th century manor. Its half-timbered walls and quiet gardens seem to belong to an older, gentler England. Yet when evening falls and the last visitors leave, this house is said to wake into a different life. Legends speak of a grey lady who drifts silently along the upper corridors and across the grand hall. Some claim to have seen her pause at a window before fading into the air, her pale outline glowing in moonlight. Others tell of a phantom coach driven by a headless coachman heard rattling through the courtyard on stormy nights. Even the animals of Shibden seem touched by mystery. A shadow-black cat is known to pass straight through a solid wall and vanish without a sound. The grounds hold their own sadness. Near a pond once used for ornamental boating, people have reported the figure of a young girl wandering the water's edge, thought to be the spirit of a child who drowned there long ago. Inside, a nebulous black shape, like a cloak, sometimes glides across the cellar, accompanied by the sudden smell of pipe smoke or a strong scent of lavender. Visitors describe faint voices, the creak of invisible footsteps, and on occasion, a sharp slap to the back of the head when no one stands nearby. One of the most poignant stories concerns Anne Walker, a historical resident whose life ended in tragedy after long struggles with mental health. Some believe it is Anne who lingers in the quieter rooms, her presence felt as a soft sigh or a flicker of cold air along the staircase. Today, Shibden Hall is carefully preserved as a museum of Halifax's past. Yet after dusk, when the house settles into silence and the gardens darken under the trees, it is easy to believe that not all of its residents have left. The Grey Lady, the headless coachman, and the restless spirits of centuries gone still seem to wander, reminding every visitor that the history of this Yorkshire manor is far from finished. The Sovereign Inn. On the quiet edge of Huddersfield, where fields meet the long moorland road, stands the Sovereign Inn. By daylight, it is a welcoming country pub, its low stone walls and flickering hearth offering warmth to travelers. Yet when night falls and the last glasses are cleared away, the inn is said to reveal a far older and more mysterious side. Many stories center on a lady seen at the upper windows, a faint figure in 19th century dress whose soft perfume sometimes drifts through empty rooms. Locals believe she is Elizabeth Smith, a former landlady known for her gentle manners and dedication to the inn. Some guests describe catching a sudden whiff of floral scent before noticing a dim silhouette move across the upstairs corridor and fade into the darkness. The cellar, however, is where the Sovereign's atmosphere deepens into unease. Animals brought to the door, dogs on leads, or farm cats seeking shelter, refuse to enter, backing away with hackles raised. Legend speaks of a phantom gentleman who lingers there, a doomed patron from long ago. In a drunken mistake, he is said to have opened the wrong door, tumbling down the steep stone steps and breaking his neck. His spirit, confused and restless, is thought to remain near the place where he fell. Staff finishing their closing duties have reported the sound of slow footsteps behind them on the cellar stairs, followed by the faint scrape of a chair across the flagstones. On one winter evening, a bartender felt a sudden push of cold air and heard what seemed to be a man's low cough in the darkness, though no one else was present. Today, the Sovereign Inn still serves good food and bright conversation. Yet late at night, when the last embers die and silence fills the rooms, the air can thicken with the memory of Elizabeth's soft perfume and the unseen presence of the ill-fated traveler below. To stand on the cellar steps in that quiet hour is to feel the weight of a story that refuses to leave a reminder that this humble roadside inn carries a history far deeper than its welcoming glow. Old Golf House Hotel, where the moorland winds sweep across the edge of Huddersfield, stands the Old Golf House Hotel, a handsome Georgian building with mellow stone walls and broad windows that look out across rolling hills. By day, it offers the quiet luxury of an English country retreat. Yet when evening settles and the corridors grow still, the hotel is said to host visitors of a different kind, guests who never check out. Stories speak first of unexplained sounds. Housekeepers have found taps turning on and off by themselves, and guests have woken to hear measured footsteps pacing the first-floor hallway. In the small hours, the tread as steady as if someone were on nightly patrol. Cold spots drift along the grand staircase and hover by the junction where the kitchen stairs meet the newer wing, as though an invisible presence lingers there. The most striking apparition is a woman in somber Victorian dress, her face pale and distant. She is often seen on the stairwell or gliding silently along the upstairs corridor. Witnesses describe a faint rustle of heavy skirts and the chill that follows her passage. Some believe she may have been connected to the house when it served as a private residence, perhaps a lady whose love story ended in grief and isolation. One guest recalls waking in the small hours to the unmistakable sound of footsteps entering the room, followed by a gentle pressure on the bed, as if someone had sat beside him. The door remained locked. Another staff member carrying fresh linen felt a sudden brush of icy air and glimpsed a shadow slide across the landing and vanish into the wall. By daylight, the Old Golf House Hotel welcomes weddings and weary travelers with warmth and comfort. Yet when the last lights dim and the quiet of the moor closes in, it is easy to believe that a lonely figure still keeps her silent watch, reliving a story that time has never managed to lay to rest. The soft creak of unseen steps and the turning of taps in the empty dark suggests that some guests once welcomed here have simply decided never to leave. The Peace Hall. In the very heart of Halifax stands the Peace Hall, an immense 18th-century cloth market built around a vast stone courtyard. By daylight, its sweeping arcades and elegant Georgian arches ring with music cafes and the bustle of visitors. Yet when night falls and the gates close, the hall becomes a cathedral of silence, where centuries of trade and secret violence are said to stir again. Local legend tells of merchants murdered for their money, their restless spirits pacing the echoing galleries. After dark, shopkeepers locking up have heard footsteps crossing the deserted square, and the soft clink of coins, though no living trader remains. The most familiar figure is a small ghostly girl, often glimpsed darting between columns or seen arranging objects only to scatter them moments later. Books have been hurled from shelves in an empty shop, and delicate ornaments have slid from locked display cases without breaking. A night watchman once described the sudden rattle of the great iron gates as if someone outside sought desperate entry. When he approached, the heavy doors stood perfectly still. Another witness reported a faint child's laughter echoing high above the courtyard, fading just as he reached the upper gallery. Others speak of fleeting shadows that cross the broad square beneath the moon, or a figure glimpsed at the end of a long arcade who disappears as soon as one begins to follow. Even in daylight, some traders tell of tools moving from bench to bench and the smell of old pipe smoke drifting past the stalls. Today, the Peace Hall is a celebrated cultural centre and one of Yorkshire's architectural treasures. But when the final cafe closes and the stone arcades fall silent, a different history seeps through. The murdered merchants, the mischievous child, and the nameless footsteps still seem to walk the galleries where cloth once changed hands and fortunes rose and fell. To stand alone in the center of the empty courtyard after dark is to feel that the hall remembers every bargain, every betrayal, and every sudden act of violence, a marketplace where echoes of commerce and tragedy remain as vivid as the day they were made. Kirkstall Abbey. On the wooded banks of the River Aire stand the majestic ruins of Kirkstall Abbey, founded more than 8 centuries ago. Its soaring arches and moss-softened stones make it one of the finest Cistercian monasteries in England. By day, the abbey welcomes families and walkers, a peaceful refuge amid the city. But when dusk gathers and mist rises from the river, the silence grows deep enough to hear the past breathing. Legends speak first of Mary, a young woman whose tragic choice sealed her fate. Centuries ago, she is said to have witnessed her lover commit a brutal murder within the cloistered grounds. Stricken with horror, she revealed the crime, condemning the man she loved. Soon after, grief and guilt consumed her. Visitors claim her spirit still wanders the shattered nave, a slim figure in pale garments, sometimes accompanied by the low whimper of a spectral dog. Equally unsettling is the tale of the mad monk. Long ago, he is thought to have scratched his brother's initials into the stone floor in a fit of despair. Now, on quiet nights, a hooded figure is seen gliding among the columns, pausing at the very spot where those markings once lay. Some have heard his faint chant echo through the chapter house, the words lost to time, but heavy with sorrow. Eyewitnesses speak of sudden cold currents flowing through empty cloisters, of soft footfalls keeping pace beside them, and of shadows that slip behind pillars only to vanish. One evening, a visitor felt the tug of a coarse robe brush his sleeve, though no one stood near. Another swore he heard the echo of a bell, long since fallen silent. Today, Kirkstall Abbey is cherished as a monument of medieval architecture and local pride. Yet after sunset, when moonlight filters through roofless arches and the river mist climbs the broken stairways, it is easy to believe that Mary and the mad monk still keep vigil. Their grief and penance seem woven into the very stones, turning the abbey into a vast and solemn chamber where the boundary between history and haunting quietly fades. Ingrow West train station. Tucked in a quiet valley near Keighley stands Ingrow West train station, a heritage stop that today welcomes steam enthusiasts and museum visitors. By day, its neat platforms and polished engines feel like a living postcard of the railway's golden age. Yet as night deepens and the last carriage is locked, this little station belongs to another, more shadowed time. The most striking legend centers on phantom steam. For years, locals and late-night workers have reported thick smoke pouring from the dark railway tunnel, billowing in the moonlight as if a powerful engine were approaching. But no train is scheduled. No headlamp pierces the gloom, and when investigators enter the tunnel, they find only silence and cold stone. Those who stand at the mouth of the tunnel speak of a sudden smell of coal and hot iron, the unmistakable tang of a steam locomotive that simply is not there. Some connect these appearances to a long-ago accident whispered about in railway lore. Though records are hazy, the story tells of a driver who lost control on a misty night, his engine plunging into the siding. Whether fact or legend, the echoes remain. Volunteers have described hearing a distant whistle carried on the wind, followed by the slow clank of couplings that fades as abruptly as it begins. One evening, a museum staff member, locking the signal box, felt a tremor beneath his feet, like the first rumble of an oncoming train. A cool draft surged from the tunnel, and the faint outline of a smoke plume seemed to form, lit by moonlight before melting into the night air. Even the station's lamps flickered and buzzed, though the power supply was steady. By day, Ingrow West delights visitors with living history and the gentle hiss of real engines. But after dusk, when the valley grows quiet and the platform empties, the station seems to slip back into the age of steam. The phantom smoke, the scent of burning coal, and the far-off whistle suggest that a fragment of that era still rides the night rails, forever arriving and never quite gone. Calverley Old Hall. In the quiet village of Calverley stands Calverley Old Hall, a medieval manor of heavy timbers and worn stone. By daylight, it is a place of architectural beauty and long English history. But when dusk deepens and the lanes fall silent, the hall becomes the setting for one of West Yorkshire's darkest family tragedies. The story belongs to Walter Calverley, a 17th-century gentleman whose life ended in violence and madness. One spring night, overcome by what old records call a frenzy, Walter murdered 2 of his children and attacked his wife, believing he had killed her too. Seized by horror, yet still intent on finishing the deed, he rode off in search of his 3rd child. That child managed to raise the alarm, and Walter was captured before he could strike again. What followed was as grim as the crime. To prevent his estate from being forfeited to the crown, Walter refused to plead, knowing that under English law, a guilty plea would allow his property to be seized. Even under brutal torture, he held silent and was eventually pressed to death, a punishment known as peine forte et dure. Local legend claims his tormented spirit never left. On moonless nights, villagers speak of a headless horseman galloping along the lanes, the thunder of hooves echoing long after the road lies empty. Sometimes a shadowy company is said to ride with him, figures without faces who vanish at the crossroads. Others have glimpsed a solitary horse snorting cold mist near the hall gate before dissolving into the night air. Those who linger near the hall after dark describe sudden gusts of icy wind and the metallic scent of old blood. A passerby once told of hearing frantic hoofbeats approaching fast, only to find the road deserted and silent. Today, Calverley Old Hall is admired for its medieval craftsmanship and ongoing restoration. Yet its stones still seem to carry the anguish of that terrible night. The ghost of Walter Calverley, headless and unrepentant, remains a spectral warning of how rage and silence can echo across the centuries. Top Withens. High on the Pennine Moors above Haworth lies Top Withens, a lonely ruin battered by wind and rain. Reached only by long footpaths across heather and stone, the shattered farmhouse stands like a sentinel against the sky. By day, it offers sweeping views that draw walkers and Bronte enthusiasts, for it is said to have inspired the storm-lashed setting of Wuthering Heights. But when dusk falls and the clouds hang low, Top Withens belongs to a different, darker story. Local legend tells of a wandering ghost that moves between this ruin and the Haworth parsonage below. Some say it is Emily Bronte herself, revisiting the lonely route she once walked for inspiration. Others believe it to be an older spirit bound to the moor long before her time. Whichever the truth, the figure is described as solitary and slow-moving, wrapped in a long cloak that flutters though the air may be still. Even on calm evenings, visitors speak of whispers carried on sudden gusts of stones shifting underfoot, as if someone unseen is pacing beside them. One late hiker recalled hearing measured footsteps following his own along the ridge, always matching his pace but never closing the distance. When he turned, there was only the endless heather and a deepening mist. The ruin itself seems to breathe with memory, Windows gape like empty eyes, and the hearth still smells faintly of wood smoke after rain. On moonlit nights, some have glimpsed a pale glow moving room to room as if a candle were being carried through the roofless chambers. Dogs have been known to whine and refuse the final approach, trembling until led away. Today, Top Withens is a magnet for walkers and lovers of Bronte lore. Yet as darkness gathers and the wind moans across the desolate hills, it feels less like a literary landmark and more like a threshold between worlds. Whether the lone figure belongs to Emily Bronte or to some older legend, lost in the peat and stone, the moor keeps its secret well. To stand there at twilight is to sense the veil between past and present grow thin, as if the moor itself remembers every solitary step. The Flying Duck. In the heart of the market town of Ilkley stands the Flying Duck, a friendly stone-built pub with a warm bar and the scent of good ale. By day, it is known for laughter and conversation. Yet when the last pint is poured and the doors are locked, the building returns to a far older identity, one steeped in confinement and silence. Long before it became a public house, this structure served as a local jailhouse, and many believe that the echoes of those darker days have never left. Patrons and staff tell of two shadowy figures who appear without warning, one upstairs, the other in the bar itself. The upstairs spectre is sometimes glimpsed as a fleeting outline at the top of the stair, while the bar-side presence seems to linger in doorways, watching quietly before melting into the wall. Poltergeist-like activity deepens the mystery. Late at night, wine glasses have been discovered arranged in a perfect triangle on the bar, though no one was present to move them. The hand dryer in the men's restroom has been known to activate again and again with no living hand nearby. A former bartender recalls hearing the rattle of glasses from an empty room and finding the triangle of stemware perfectly aligned when he went to check. Some visitors describe a sudden drop in temperature or the feeling of being observed while seated near the old stone fireplace. One evening, a regular customer felt a light tap on his shoulder and turned to find the bar deserted, the only sound the faint hum of the cooler. Though renovated and welcoming, the Flying Duck still carries the imprint of its past as a place of confinement. The mingling scents of hops and old stone seem to hold memories that cannot be scrubbed away. As midnight approaches and Ilkley's streets fall silent, the pub becomes a liminal space, half cheerful inn, half silent cell, where history and haunting share the same narrow walls. For those who linger after hours, each creak of timber and sudden whisper of air hints that the jailhouse days are not entirely gone. Clay House, hidden at the end of a tree-lined lane in West Vale, stands Clay House, a fine 17th century mansion built of warm stone and surrounded by quiet gardens. By daylight, it seems the picture of rural elegance. But when the last visitors depart and dusk thickens over the valley, this old house is said to awaken into a place of deep sorrow and lingering spirits. The most often spoken of is the White Lady known as Jane. Her story varies, but each version is steeped in heartbreak. Some say she was the daughter of a proud family who fell in love with a man of lower station. When her family discovered the romance, they locked her away to force an end to the affair. Refusing to renounce her love, Jane is said to have died alone, in despair. Others tell that she was jilted on the eve of her wedding and, consumed by grief, ended her life within the house. Whichever account is true, her sorrow seems to have soaked into the very walls. Visitors and staff have reported soft weeping in empty corridors and the sudden scent of old lavender when no flowers are present. A pale figure in flowing white is sometimes seen gliding along the upper hallway, her head bowed, before vanishing through a locked door. Outside on moonlit nights, witnesses speak of a shadowy form hanging from a tree near the driveway, swaying gently, though the air is still. One evening, a caretaker locking the garden gate felt a sudden chill and saw what looked like a woman standing by the orchard wall. She turned to call out, and in that instant, the figure was gone, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves. Today, Clay House hosts community events and quiet weddings, its elegant rooms polished and warm. Yet when darkness settles and the lanes fall silent, the house feels caught between celebration and lament. The White Lady's footsteps, the faint cries in the halls, and the lone figure beneath the trees remind every late visitor that some stories of love and loss never reach an ending, but drift endlessly through stone and shadow. West Yorkshire's haunted halls and moors hide echoes of untold lives. Share your ghostly thoughts below and subscribe to Creepy Experience for the next journey into Britain's darkest legends.